Hello YouTube, and this is Thomas Judge back once again. I have just watched the 17th movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because I've just watched Thor Ragnarok. Okay, Thor Ragnarok. Well, it's a third Thor film, the end of the Thor trilogy, I guess, even though we know we're getting a fourth one. And what did I think of it? It is basically a good movie. It starts off with Thor getting back together with Loki. We find out he's not dead. His sister breaks out of some kind of magical prison now that their father passes away, and she wants to rule Asgard. She throws him into some alien planet where he has to be a gladiator and fights the Hulk, and you've got a movie. What did I think of this? Well, first things first, I enjoyed the story, the overall story arc, the overall story beats. I know it's based on the Planet Hulk storyline, but generally it was just good. It flowed well. It was reasonably well paced. I liked the tone. I really loved the comedy tone of Thor Ragnarok. And to be honest, I think I've said this in my previous reviews, I would have preferred it had Thor: The Dark World and even the original Thor movie also leaned much more into the comedy tone. It suits the character. It suits the way that it's all done. It was just it was just good. It was great. And I know a lot of people said it was odd to go for this buddy cop movie vibe for Thor, but genuinely watching them all through day after day and getting to movie 17 on the 17th day, it really feels like a natural evolution. And in fact, it feels like an overdue evolution for the series. On that note, the soundtrack, phenomenal. It's exactly the direction the soundtrack should have gone. Really liked it. Awesome. I love the design of Hela in this. The look she has going on is just phenomenal. The outfit, the powers, the crown, the whole thing. Had they leaned into the Infinity Gauntlet premise a bit more in terms of the comics, where, if you don't know, Thanos is actually in love with the physical incarnation of death, I wonder if they could have made this work by having Thanos and Hela actually work as a couple. I'm very, very glad they didn't. I always thought the idea was kind of stupid and I never enjoyed it in the comics. But if they were going to do it, we have never seen a better personification of a female avatar of death on screen than we have in the form of Hela. Speaking of which, generally the casting was great. Obviously, Jeff Goldblum, everyone else, and of course the Matt Damon cameo. If you blinked and missed it, I totally forgot about that until I started watching this again, and then did make me laugh out loud. And I did actually love the broad thematic Shakespearean elements to this movie. And I know that sounds weird given it's a jokey comedy buddy cop superhero movie, but for example, the aspect where Thor loses both his hammer and then loses his eye, and in that sense becomes increasingly more and more like his father. I mean, we've seen it before in things like Star Wars, where Luke loses a hand, just like Vader, etc., etc. But it's just done really well here because it shows the progression of the son into the father, of the child into the adult. And there's very much like a Shakespearean arc of growth there, where he is following his father's footsteps despite the tension he's had about becoming his father in the past. So yeah, just really good, really evocative. Obviously, you'll notice in a couple of months' time a couple of days' time when I watch Infinity War, and Rocket Raccoon just replaces Thor's eye like that. I'm going to be furious because I remember hating that in the original Infinity War, and I've no doubt I will hate it when I watch that again. What did I dislike about the movie? To be honest, most of what I disliked about the movie was about the intersection of different portrayals of different characters. That's going to sound really weird, so I'll explain what I mean. All the characters in this were great, and they all performed really, really well. You had Jeff Goldblum, you had Kate Blanchett, you had Hulk, you had all of them, all performing great performances by themselves. But when you put them all together in a movie, it doesn't work. All those performances felt like they all diverged slightly or overlapped too much. I'll try and explain what I mean by that. So Jeff Goldblum absolutely nails it as the Grandmaster. Like, he's got this kind of weird, bumbling comedy kind of tone, whilst also running a planet full of slaves and killing people and so on. He nails it. His performance is perfect. In contrast, at the same time, you're being interspersed with scenes in Asgard with Kate Blanchett as Hela, as the goddess of death. And she also goes for a slightly comedy vibe. I mean, she goes for an informal vibe, which is fine, but then she also goes for a slightly comedy vibe, which tempers the sociopathic element of being a goddess of death too much. It would have worked by itself had it just been a film about her. It would have worked in the same way that James Spader's portrayal of Ultron would have worked. But having that contrasted with Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster, who really is this kind of irreverent, jokey character, it just felt like she was going for something which was kind of in between sociopath and the Jeff Goldblum character, and it didn't quite land. And the reason it doesn't land is that in this movie it falls in the shadow of Goldblum's character. I mean, on a personal note, I would have massively, massively loved it if they'd actually pulled in Angela and had her as the sister of Thor, as they have in the comics. So if you don't know, Angela is from the Spawn universe. She's recently joined the Marvel universe, and that would have been really awesome to see. But that's a complete aside. But my point is that having Kate Blanchett's Hela and having Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster in the same movie meant that, to be fair, Jeff Goldblum kind of overshadowed and kind of redirected Kate Blanchett's acting, is what it felt like. On a similar note, Carl Urban plays Scourge. And Carl Urban is not a comedy actor. Like, he does well in this. He's got some good comedy timing moments at the beginning. But after the opening sequence, he just turns into just some kind of foot soldier. And they try to have a couple of comedy moments with him that just don't land. He's not the actor for this, and that's not the character to use in this way. Again, they don't quite lean enough into him being a comedy character that they have in the first 5 minutes in the opening scene. And they don't lean enough into him being a sociopath and a soldier and a barbarian warrior, as they try to do later on in the movie. And again, Carl Urban's wasted in that role. So what you have there is a variety of characters who are all trying different unusual blends of characters themselves. And they're all kind of overshadowing and crowding each other out. In addition, you've got Baby Hulk, as I call him. Hulk in this movie works. He's petulant, he's childish, he fights against Thor, the whole thing, that's all fine. But actually, when you look at him as Hulk within the broader sort of meta-narrative of all the different depictions of Hulk throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it just doesn't work. This kind of babyish, pouting Hulk is a new Hulk I've never seen before. I've read a lot of Hulk comics. I'm familiar with the Grey Hulk, the Red Hulk, even though that's obviously a different person. The She-Hulks, obviously different people. But all the different variations of, you have Savage Hulk, you have Smart Scientist Hulk, you have all the different sort of nuances of Hulk's personality. And the one that I thought personally was best, and I'm aware I'm a bit of a 90s fanboy, was the Hulk that existed in the main Marvel Universe during the Heroes Reborn era. Because that was Hulk divorced from Banner's personality. It was an articulate Hulk, but it was a moody and angry Hulk. But it wasn't a savage Hulk. It was sort of a bitter and sadistic Hulk. It was really kind of cool. And I'm not saying that would have been the right Hulk for this movie, but what I am saying is I've never come across a baby Hulk. I've never come across a childish, infantile Hulk who suffers from abandonment issues if Thor tries to get on a Quinjet. And this kind of weird pouting, kicking the ground and throwing balls around and just getting really moody and getting his feelings hurt, I just didn't like it. It works for the movie. Not going to knock that. It works for the movie. But I just didn't like it. And it was things like leaning into that were just irritating. One of the final peaks in the final battle sequence was when Banner goes to take out Fenris the Wolf on top of the Bifrost. And he leaps out the ship, and you expect him to leap out and land as the Hulk. But he doesn't. He leaps out, lands as Banner, obviously breaks loads of bones and just lies there limply on the floor. Then Fenris steps over him. And then a few moments later, the Hulk grabs Fenris and beats him up and so on. I mean, I get that. It was for the cheap laugh of seeing what happens when Banner hits the Bifrost and just getting all smashed up without turning into the Hulk. I understand that, but it was one step too far on the comedy circuit. It would have been so much better had they done something more dramatic and more powerful with that moment. And they could have done. They do similar things throughout that final battle sequence. Thor embracing his legacy as the god of thunder rather than the god of hammers, for example. That was brilliant. That was epic. The music was great. The tone, the pacing and the drama of it, fantastic. Why couldn't they have done something similar with the Hulk? And I'm not saying they should have done a retread of what happened at the end of the Incredible Hulk movie when Edward Norton pulled the exact same gig, basically, of jumping out of a plane, landing as the Hulk, essentially. I'm not saying they should have done that, but what they did it was just jarring, and it was a good idea, and it was a good comedy point, and it was fine, but it crowds this movie with too many jarring tones that are back and forth a bit too much, and I'm not 100% certain where they are. Having said that, those are my thoughts on the movie. I don't want to bag on it too much because I did really, really enjoy it. This is a good movie, a good family movie, a good Marvel movie, and given that they were lurching into a completely different tone for Thor, which, to be fair, they should have embraced a while ago, I think Taika Waititi basically made a couple of missteps which are completely understandable. If you like Thor Ragnarok, I would strongly recommend that you check out the Planet Hulk comic arc by Greg Pak. It's what this movie's based on. A lot of people have talked about that. I will say it's completely different. Planet Hulk doesn't feature Thor in the slightest. It's all about Hulk being on Sakaar, and Sakaar is a bit different than what you see here. But if you are interested in getting into the comics, please check that out. If you're also interested into the more sort of Shakespearean, dramatic, sort of epic part of this story instead, and the more Thor-focused bit, I would strongly, unequivocally recommend Jason Aaron's Thor the God Butcher arc, which is incredible. I read it recently, I think I read it earlier this year, and I was absolutely blown away. People talk about it as being a great and definitive Thor arc, but that's doing it a disservice. This is the great and definitive Thor arc, and it is absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't have much to do with the movie Ragnarok, but it is Thor based, and it does show you where that line comes from that Hela uses, which is, what are you the god of? And then Thor realizes and remembers that he's the god of lightning, of course. Yeah, so those are my recommendations. Those are my thoughts on the movie. And I hope you enjoyed the quick review. As always, guys, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon and picking up my novel, No Gods or Kings. And as always, I'll be here tomorrow with the next movie in the series, which is going to be Black Panther. Until then, stay classy.